Today we're going to make Gordon Ramsay's legendary Beef Wellington with budget ingredients available at any Walmart. We'll discuss a simple, easy to follow plan for mastering this intimidating dish. I'll even show you the 5-step process professionals use to ensure the pastry stays crispy instead of getting soggy. By the end of this video, you will be able to make a proper Beef Wellington that would make Gordon Ramsay proud without breaking the bank. Here's the Wellington: puff pastry, herb crepe, prosciutto, mushroom duxelle, and beef fillet. Everything you see here was purchased at Walmart. Now let's break down how to do it. During the research for this video, I visited 9 different Walmarts looking for ingredients and very quickly ran into a problem. I wasn't able to find beef tenderloin at any of them. And considering this cut is the heart and soul of a proper Wellington, I was sort of at a loss of what to do until I discovered Walmart actually did have filet, which is cut from the tenderloin. So I decided to make individual Wellingtons. It's the exact same dish, same ingredients, same process, just in an individual serving size. Instead of spending over $100 on an entire tenderloin, I was able to get 2 nice fillets for around $15 from Walmart, which makes this dish much more affordable and approachable for the average home cook. Fillets are famous for their tenderness and not really for their flavor, so to improve the taste, what I like to do is salt them generously the day before I'm planning to cook the Wellington and leave them uncovered in the fridge overnight. The salt will initially draw out a bit of moisture, but it very quickly gets reabsorbed into the meat, seasoning it even more deeply than if we had just salted the outside before cooking. The dry air circulating in the fridge will dehydrate the surface of the meat slightly, further concentrating flavor and helping us reduce moisture that might leak out during the baking process. And this is the first step in helping us prevent the dreaded soggy pastry. So all you'll do is trim up your fillets, removing any irregular pieces and the fat. Now save these because we'll use them for the sauce. We're trying to get as uniform a shape as possible so the Wellingtons bake evenly. Then just generously salt the steaks and toss them in the fridge uncovered overnight. Next up is the mushroom duxelle, and there are several different varieties of mushroom available at Walmart, but I found that Baby Bella tends to have the most flavor. When chopping up the mushrooms, it's much better to do it by hand. You can certainly do this in a food processor if you want to save on time, but manually chopping allows us to have slightly more irregular pieces which improve both texture and flavor. It takes a bit of time, but it's worth it in my opinion. The second step in preventing a spongy pastry is absolutely ensuring we have eliminated all moisture in the mushrooms before assembling our Wellingtons. Mushrooms are mostly water, so if we don't do this step properly, they'll leak out during the baking process and ruin our fun. What you'll do is heat up a bit of olive oil over medium-high heat in your largest nonstick pan. And we did get this olive oil from Walmart. I fully endorse the California Olive Ranch brand. They make a great product. Then toss in 16 ounces of finely diced mushrooms and a bit of salt. This process is going to take anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. We want to take the mushrooms as far as we can go without burning them. And you've just got to take your time on this. You'll know when they're done when you see them start to slightly caramelize and the mushrooms take on the texture of a dry dirt. That's the best way I can put it. Then you'll kill your heat, toss in a teaspoon of thyme leaves, and adjust the seasoning with salt and pepper. Then you'll want to spread them out on a baking sheet and allow all the steam to evaporate. This will help us further reduce moisture. After they've come to room temperature, toss them in the fridge uncovered until they're totally cool. It's only after the mushrooms are cold should you store them in a covered container. Every step we're doing is for the expressed purpose of trying to reduce moisture and concentrate flavor. The third step in helping us achieve a crispy pastry is using a crepe as an insulating layer. And I know Gordon doesn't use one on his popular YouTube Beef Wellington video, but he does in his masterclass version. And in my extensive testing for this video, it just works better with a crepe layer. It not only insulates the meat from overcooking, it also absorbs juices that leak out while baking. To make the crepe, it's ridiculously simple. You'll just take 1 cup of all-purpose flour and a pinch of salt and sift it into a bowl. This is a very important step because if we don't sift the flour, you will end up with lumps in your crepe. Then beat 2 eggs until the whites and yolks are totally homogeneous. Add 1 cup of milk to the eggs and whisk until it's incorporated. Then, bit by bit, stir the egg and milk mixture into the flour until you have something that resembles a somewhat runny pancake or waffle batter. Add a teaspoon of chopped chives and a teaspoon of thyme leaves and give the crepe batter a stir until the herbs are mixed in. And you'll need to let this rest in the fridge for at least an hour before using. When you're ready to make the crepes, heat a non-stick pan over low to medium-low heat and hit it with some cooking spray, purchased from Walmart, of course. When the pan is heated, add about a 1/4 cup of the crepe mixture and swirl it around the pan before it sets. And you're almost certainly not going to get a perfectly round crepe, but that's fine because we'll be cutting these to wrap our Wellingtons anyway. Cook the crepe on one side until you notice the top is totally dry. Then flip it and finish the cooking on the other side. And you'll know it's done when you see some light white spots on the bottom, like this. And you can totally cook these the day before. Just stack them on top of one another, cover, and stick them in the fridge. And they're good for a couple days. When you're ready to start assembling the Wellingtons, heat up some oil in a pan over medium-high heat. Remove the fillets from the fridge, dry off with a paper towel to ensure there's no excess moisture, and immediately sear the cold steaks. And I know you're probably wondering, shouldn't I let this come to room temperature first? You absolutely should not. The reason is because we are trying to keep the interior of the steak as cold as humanly possible because we want to do the real cooking during the baking process. These little fillets are so small, if we sear them for too long, they'll easily overcook when they're baking. We're just doing this to get an additional level of flavor from the caramelization. So just sear the steaks on all sides for about 10 to 15 seconds. Then take the fillet off the heat and put it back in the fridge immediately. And I know Gordon says to put the mustard on while it's hot, but remember, we're trying to keep the interior as cold as possible to prevent overcooking. So I find it's better to put the mustard on after it's cooled back down. When you're ready to cook the Wellingtons, preheat your oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit and put in a cookie sheet so it heats up with the oven. For the final assembly, take a wet towel and lightly dampen your work surface. This will help the plastic wrap stay down flat and it will avoid it crimping up while we're wrapping everything. Then lay down enough prosciutto to cover one of your fillets. And I was able to find a couple different brands of prosciutto at several Walmarts, but if they don't have it at yours, you can use a normal ham from their deli, sliced as thinly as possible. Then let's cover our prosciutto with a layer of mushroom duxelle, pressing down to make sure it's tightly compact. Now take the steak out of the fridge, dry it again with a paper towel, and brush on some Dijon mustard. And I know Gordon says he uses English mustard on his YouTube video, but he uses Dijon in his masterclass. I was only able to find English mustard at a couple Walmarts, but Dijon was available at every one I visited, so Dijon it is. Lay your fillet on the duxelle with the flat sides facing up and down. Pull up the plastic wrap and gently roll the layers over onto themselves, pushing the front in with your fingers, lifting up the plastic a bit, and pushing forward with your thumbs, like this. When the entire thing has been rolled up, pinch the plastic wrap from both sides and, using the table, gently push it forward, bringing it back and rolling it into a log like this. Then twist from the sides, making it as tight and uniform as you can without damaging it, and toss it in the fridge to set for at least 20 minutes. Lay out a crepe and cut off the sides so they're just slightly wider than your steak wrap. Roll up the little log to make sure the crepe is long enough to cover it, and if it's not, you might have to add a little bit more crepe to the top to make it longer. Then wet down your surface again and roll out some more plastic wrap. Lay down a layer of the crepe onto the plastic and unravel your fillet. Roll it up using the same method we used earlier, pushing down and tucking in with your fingers in the front and pushing forward with your thumbs. Roll it out against the table until it's tight and twist the plastic on both sides so it forms into a uniform log. Then toss it in the fridge for at least 10 minutes. Dust your work surface with a bit of flour and lay out the puff pastry. Lay the crepe roll on the puff pastry and roll it up just until the back end meets the other side and trim off the excess. Roll it back and trim just a bit off the sides, leaving plenty of pastry on both sides. We'll pinch off anything extra in the next step, then set your puff pastry aside. Wipe down your work surface with a damp towel and spread out some more plastic wrap. Lay the puff pastry onto it and, using a rolling pin, roll it out to make it thinner. Roll out the top and bottom where it will form a seam just a bit thinner than the rest to make sure it's uniform all the way around after it's rolled up. Brush the pastry with your egg wash and sprinkle a bit of salt and pepper on to season the inside. This will improve the flavor and help us reduce a bit of the moisture from the beef and mushrooms. Then unravel your fillet and place it on the puff pastry. Using the plastic, bring it up over the top of the log, and using your fingers in front, pull it in to make sure it's totally rolled up. Then gently smooth the log outward with your fingers like this, making sure it's even. Pinch the sides of the plastic and twist the excess puff pastry on the end. Turn it around and do the same thing to the other side. Then twist it like this to make sure it's as snug as possible. Now cut off the sides and unravel the Wellington. Tuck in and pinch the dough on each side to make sure it's completely sealed. And you'll want to make sure it's sealed tight. This will also help reduce leakage and make sure all the juices stay inside where they belong. Then set it down on a piece of parchment paper, brush it all over with egg wash until it's completely covered, and sprinkle with a bit of salt. Then remove the hot baking sheet from the oven. And this is the fourth step in helping us realize a crispy pastry. By placing the Wellington on a preheated baking sheet, it kickstarts the cooking on the bottom, which will help it crisp up faster. Then place it on the center rack of the preheated oven and bake for 20 minutes. And because we kept our fillets cold, This should be the optimal amount of time to help us reach medium rare to medium. After the Wellington is done baking, remove it from the oven to a cooling rack and allow it to cool for at least 15 to 20 minutes. And this is the fifth and final step in mastering the crispy pastry. By letting it rest, the juices in the meat redistribute instead of all that flavor leaking out onto the cutting board, thus thwarting our plans for the perfect Wellington. After it's rested, let's cut some slices and see how we did. Notice, there's very little juice pouring out onto the cutting board. The meat has reabsorbed most of it and has remained totally succulent. Because we kept our meat as cold as possible during the assembly, it has now reached a perfect medium to medium rare. There's nothing worse than when your beef is so raw it starts dropping bars with ODB. And by following the 5-step process of eliminating excess moisture at every step, we've ensured our pastry is nice and crispy instead of becoming unappetizingly soggy. Now let's give it a taste test. Really quick before we try it, I just want to say, I know this dish can be very overwhelming if you try to do everything at one time, so it does make sense to prepare beforehand. If you salt the meat, make the duxelle and the crepe the day before, it takes a lot of stress out of this dish and makes it a lot less intimidating. Alright, back to the taste test. It's absolutely delicious. I hope I've shown you this dish is much more about execution than expensive ingredients. You do not have to mortgage your house to enjoy an incredible beef Wellington. And super quick, I want to show you how to make Gordon's red wine sauce, which is a perfect pairing for beef Wellington. You'll just take the beef trimmings from earlier and saute them in a bit of neutral oil until they're lightly browned. Then toss in 2 sliced shallots or half a cup of onion, 6 peppercorns, 1 bay leaf, and a sprig of thyme. Saute until the shallot is lightly browned. Toss in a splash of red wine vinegar and let it reduce until it's almost dry. Then add 1.5 cups of red wine and reduce until it starts to get syrupy. And finally, add 1.5 cups of beef stock, bring it up to a boil, reduce the heat slightly, and cook until you've achieved the desired consistency. Then strain, adjust the seasoning with salt, and serve with the Wellingtons. It's as simple as that. And if you'd like to learn how to make a world-class bowl of ramen soup with ingredients from Walmart, be sure to check out this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.